for today would be choosing higher education. Um, just to make myself a little bit clear here, I'm not going to talk about any particular career choice or the logistics of it, but it's just about, it's a chit chat, informal chat about a thorough approach on how to choose, higher education. Um, Before I get started, I'll just talk a little bit about who I am. So my name is Kinshuk. I was in Roorkee and I graduated in electrical engineering in 2013 with a BTech degree. I worked for 1 year in Tata Steel before I moved to United States in 2014, and then next month I'll finish 7 years over here. In US, I did computer engineering from Texas A&M University, and then for the last 5 years, I've been working as a hardware design engineer at Apple in Austin, Texas, for their GPU teams. Um, One very important disclaimer here is that this talk is not intended to be a recipe for success in any way, right? What I'm going to talk about today is just based on my experiences, the learnings that I've learned in the past 7 years, 8 years since I graduated from Roorkee, and things that I would have done differently, but I want others to do differently. So that's the purpose. This talk will not give you a recipe for anything. So I would like for you guys to keep that in mind. We do have a great panel today for Q&A and discussion. So in the panel, we have Professor Arup Das from Mechanical and Industrial Engineering Department in Roorkee. Professor Das holds a PhD from IIT Kharagpur. Kiran sir, who's been spearheading the Alumni Mentorship program, is also in the panel. He graduated in from Roorkee in computer science and then also has a PhD from Georgia Tech. He's been working for a long time for Google. We have Vatsal in the call as well. He's doing his PhD with the Physics of Fluids group in University of Twente in Netherlands. And then we have Dimple, who works in product management in Thermo Fisher Scientific. Before that, she has a analytics degree from UC Irvine in California. Um, all right. So, what are the things that we are going to talk about, right? So, the broader topic for today is why should you pursue higher education, right? And then within that, there are several questions that you need to ask yourself. You need to answer those questions before making a choice. Things like which career track would be good for you. Do you even need another degree after Roorkee or not? Or what brand of institutes should you choose? Does it matter or not? So questions like those. Um, dep Depending on how much time we have and how much interest there is, we'll also talk about certain tests that you need to prepare for. If you're planning to move outside of India, then what kind of visa and work permit restrictions apply in US or in other places. So those are the topics that we are going to dive into today. Um, the first and the most obvious question is, why should you pursue higher education? So what I want you guys to do is, ask yourself, do you even need another degree? And before I even jump into, whether why should you do it, let's talk about the reasons not to pursue higher education, right? The most important reason that I would say for not pursuing higher education is if you're unsure of what you want to do. So, so you've already spent 4 years in Roorkee. From now on, um, you already have opportunities to do really good work in your life. So if you're planning to spend 2 or 3 years in another formal degree or another formal education, you need to ask yourself, do you even really want it, right? So you need to be absolutely sure about what you want to do with that degree before you even start, putting in efforts in that direction. So if unless you're sure, do not do it. Um, Another thing is, sometimes people choose higher education just to develop a particular skill set, but in today's day, and especially you guys must have seen in COVID times as well, right? There are a lot of things that you can do individually, independently, online. So let's say you want to be a good computer programmer, then you don't necessarily need a computer science degree or a master's degree in computer science, just to be a good programmer. So there are lots of MOOCs online. There are lots of professional certificate, professional development courses. That online masters is growing a lot. So you need to ask yourself, that do you need a formal degree in to acquire a skill set that you want to acquire, or you can do it independently. And if you can do it independently, then usually it's a better choice because it allows you to do self-paced work. It's generally cheaper than a formal education degree, and then has a lot more flexibility around it, right? And then the third thing would be, your short term goals do not even require another degree. So let's say you have your career goals planned out for the next 3 to 5 years or 7 years, and a master's does not fit in that plan, then I would encourage you to not do it, right? Now, having talked about that, let's talk about why should you do it. So why should you do it? You there are multiple ways in which a higher education can help you. The biggest reason that I've seen in my life is career pivot. Now, what is a career pivot? Career pivot is like essentially trying to do something which is orthogonally different to what you're doing right now. So I'll give you an example. In my case, I used to work in Tata Steel. I used to deal with heavy machinery, looking at electrical maintenance and functionality of machines deployed in a steel industry. But I figured out that there's something else that interests me, and that's like building gadgets, building chips for latest technology, right? Hardware chips, and that is something which is entirely different than dealing with a power line with high voltage. So I figured that I can take up another degree, acquire some skill set, learn some things, and then eventually move into that industry. So that's something which is called career pivot, and higher education really helps with career pivot. Now, sometimes career pivot can be done without higher education. There are several examples. Like one of the examples is, let's say you are in a software company, and then you're a software developer, and then eventually you want to move into product marketing, product management. Then there are ways within your company to do that without even taking up another degree. So sometimes career pivot can be achieved without even higher education, but if not, then that's a good reason to pursue another degree, right? Another example would be skill development that does require formal education. So like I said, in my case, I wanted to move into VLSI industry, and VLSI is a it's a complex phenomenon, right? There's no way to just do 1 or 2 or 3 courses online and try to learn everything about it. There are 7 to 8 to 10 different aspects of VLSI design, and then all of those can be studied in depth. So I figured out that instead of me doing it individually, it would be a good choice for me to pursue formal education. So those kind of things do help you if you want to pursue higher education. And then a really big reason that I see these days is relocation. So sometimes your plan is to, at least for a short term, move outside of India. And while there is a track where you can be in your company and then look for jobs outside of India, um, in your company, outside of your company, but usually a much easier choice is to pursue another degree in the location that you want to eventually go to, and then find a job there. Like, this particularly applies for jobs in US. I'll just hold off the presentation once and see if other people want to get admitted to the call, and if uh, then we can continue again. Yeah, I do see a lot of people waiting. All right, I just got another request. Just give me 1 minute. All right, I'm gonna need a little feedback again. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah, yeah, we can see it.
Okay, so the next natural question is, which career track would be better for you? Um, and to answer that question, I'll probably ask another question to you, right? Are you passionate about something? That is the question that you should ask yourself when you're trying to decide what you want to do in life. And if your answer is yes, then your choice is easy. If you're passionate about making music, go make music. The choice is easy. There are different ways to do it, there are different avenues to explore, and it becomes easy because you're never in doubt about your choice, right? But what I've seen, and this applies to me too, is usually the answer is no. Like, usually people are not really passionate about anything. And I wanted to understand that it's a very common scenario, and it's perfectly okay to not be passionate about anything. That's not what we see in movies. That's not what we hear in group discussions. That's not what influencers talk about. But that is a common scenario where people really don't know they're calling up until very late, right? And that's all right. But then, how do you choose what to do next? So in that case, a good starting point always is to figure out what you don't want to do, right? Because then at least you can eliminate some of the choices that exist for you. Like in my case, I was really clear on one thing, that I can never work in finance. I had known enough about finance, investment banking from people around me, and looking at their life, I could make a really easy choice for myself, which was I don't want to do it. And similarly, I eliminated certain options before I eventually got into what I like, right? And then even if you're not passionate about something, there must be something that excites you. And that is something that you need to figure out. Like in my case, gadgets excited me. I was always intrigued about, how do we build those technologies, how much complexity goes around it, and what kind of design challenges come in. So that those are the kind of things that excited me, so I eventually tried to move in that direction. Um, another thing that I would like to mention here is that what excites you could be multiple things, right? You might be interested in history, economics, corporate law, technology, marketing. There are a lot of things, and the good thing about being an engineer is like it allows you to move into any field in the future. So if it is multiple things, good, that's a good start. Then what you need to do is you need to do some objective analysis of, you need to try to separate your hobbies from your career. So what you need to understand is, okay, several things can be good for you, several things can interest you, but only some of those would be good in your long-term career. And usually what helps making those choices is, data collection. So collect as much data as possible. What is the entry barrier in the particular field. How many people are in the job market, how does a career growth track look like in that particular field. And then talk to as many people as possible. And I cannot stress this enough. If you want to be in hardware industry, talk to me, talk to five other people like me, talk to people in US, talk to people in India, talk, like, understand what it means to do that work in which place, and what are the caveats around it. And usually people with experience give you the best insight on what the job is. So yes, if multiple things excite you, perfect, no worries there. Try to figure out, try to narrow it down eventually over time, and then collect as much data, talk to as many people. And there is no hurry around it, right? Once you graduate from Roorkee, you're easily going to get 20, 30, 40 years of professional career. So even though it might seem like you need to make your choices quickly, that's really not the case. You can take a few years. You can understand what you want to do. Uh, then the next thing that I want to talk about is return on investment. This is not a term that most of you would hear commonly in your day-to-day life, or most of you wouldn't even know. But what is return on investment? So basically, you make an investment on anything, right? And then you assess whether the returns that you get out of it are worth it or not. So let's say I go to watch Dabang 2, right? And I pay like $500. Then my return on investment is really low because it's really not a good movie, right? So for really small choices to really big choices, you should always be thinking about what the ROI is. And especially in your career, you should really think about what ROI is. Now, how do you assess ROI, right? So there, in my opinion, there are two components. One is a short-term component, which is usually financial. So let's say you graduate out of Roorkee, and the next step that you think would be good for you is to move to IIMs, pursue an MBA. So the ROI in that case would be, you'll spend around 20 lakhs, get to be in the IIM for 2 years, and then you want to assess that what you get out of that degree, is it worth buying for 20 lakhs? And if the answer is yes, then go ahead and do it, right? Another thing that factors in ROI, which usually people neglect, is opportunity cost. Now, what is opportunity cost? Opportunity cost is basically the cost that you incur by not doing something while you're doing something else, right? So, like in our IIM example, let's say you have a job and you earn like 15 lakhs per annum in India, right? And then you move to IIM for 2 years. You pay 20 lakhs to the institute to pursue a degree. But then while you're there in the IIM for 2 years, you're also losing out on 30 lakhs, right? Because you would have earned that money if you were not pursuing an MBA. So eventually the cost of your MBA suddenly is not 20 lakh, it's 50 lakhs, because you lost out on 30 and you also paid 20, right? So when you're assessing ROI, do not forget that there's always an opportunity cost associated, right? Factor that in. And then the more difficult one is, which is basically, what kind of opportunities does your degree provide you? What kind of people does it provide you access to? Does it provide you, a chance of relocating to some other location? And these are the things which are, really difficult to assess. And again, data collection and talking to people would, help a lot in that regard. So if you're trying to assess long-term ROI, try to come up with a long-term career plan and see how that degree fits in your long-term career plan, and see if it makes sense to pursue that degree and spend that time and spend that much money and effort in that degree, right? A good example that I've seen in US is research funding. I see that a lot of people come here for masters and they have a clear goal in their mind that they come to US, they pursue a degree and they want a job when they graduate. And the fees in US universities is typically higher, especially for people coming from India, because the dollar to rupee conversion is 75 bucks. So what people do is they start chasing research funding, right, in institutes, and then they join some research group and they get funded. And yes, they don't have to pay their fees, but what happens is, because you're getting funded by the research, you're also expected to do certain work, pursue certain research for a certain amount of time, right? And people lose track there. They in an effort to balance their short-term ROI, they're not thinking about their long-term ROI. So so when you're thinking about ROI, those kind of caveats you need to be aware of, and those kind of things that you need to assess, that is it worth in the short term and is also worth in the long term, whatever you're trying to do. um, Another thing that I've seen is usually discussed a lot in India is brands of institute, and the question that does the brand name of an institute matter? Does being in IITs, IIM, MIT, Harvard, Oxford, does it matter? And the answer is really not easy. And the real answer is it matters, and it also doesn't matter. Um, what I would do like to stress though is, avoid being obsessed with a particular brand, because no particular brand would guarantee you, success or a lack of success, for that matter. You can be in the best institutes and still not make it big in your career, or you could not be in the best institute and still, make it absolutely kill it in your professional career, right? So avoid being obsessed about brands, but do not ignore brands, because sometimes brands are really important. And you guys have already seen it in your life in Rootki, right? Let's say you want to go eventually work into Deutsche Bank. In India, Deutsche Bank only recruits, let's say, in 7 8 institutes or 7 8 IITs. So then if you're in an IIT, then it's really helping your goals. So the brand of IIT is helping you, is opening certain doors for you that other brands do not open for their students. So yes, brand in certain cases does matter, and you need to be aware of those things, right? So try to figure out what you want to do in life and see if being in a particular institute does make sense or does open certain opportunities for you that otherwise wouldn't have existed for you if you weren't in that place. Another thing that I think people tend to ignore is, brand is not just the name of an institute or an organization, right? Brands is not just, IITs or IIMs or Apple, Google, Facebook. It's much more than that. Like in case of research, especially if you're doing a PhD, brand is really the guy you're working with, right? So, like in my field, we have Professor Onur Mutlu. His name is really big in the field, and he does a lot of great research in the field of computer architecture, right? So it doesn't really matter where Professor Onur Mutlu is. Previously, he was in US. Now he lives in Switzerland. He works in ETH. What really matters is that you're getting a chance to work with him and learn with him, right? Similarly, brands also mean, certain sometimes geographical locations. Like in B schools, let's say you want to be a financial consultant, right? Then even though Wharton School or Stanford is much ranked much better, a much better choice for you is to be, in New York University or in Columbia, because it's in New York, it's right in the middle of the industry that you want to crack. So then it really makes sense for you to be there. So then Columbia suddenly becomes a much better brand than Stanford. Um, like in my case, I wanted to move to hardware industry. Texas was a growing place at that time. A lot of hardware companies are coming to US. So when I applied for grad school, Texas A&M was one of my admits, and it was frankly not the best university among the ones that I applied and got admit from. But when I assessed what I want to do after my degree, Texas A&M brand made a lot of sense to me, and that's why I eventually ended up, joining that. So sometimes it can matter the name, sometimes can it does not. What you really need to assess is, what do you want to do with it, what your degree, and then assess whether, chasing a brand really helps you or not. Um, Next, let's talk about, what are the available options. And one thing that I really find cool about engineering is the answer is you have countless opportunities. I've seen engineers become lawyers. I've seen engineers become economists. I've seen there was a case in my grad school. One of my American friends, he was in undergrad at that time. Post his engineering undergrad, he went on to become a doctor. He just recently finished his residency, and now he's going to be a doctor, right? That's bizarre to me. One for 4 years you're studying engineering, and suddenly you decide, hey, I want to be a doctor, and then you put in efforts in that direction and become a doctor, right? So being an engineer allows us to be several things. You guys have seen it in India as well. People from IIT go on to become IAS officers, bankers, consultants, whatnot, right? But the most popular choices that I have seen in my life fall under three categories. One is that you either pursue a technical degree, which is a master's like MS or MTech or PhD, um, either in India or outside, or you go on to pursue a business degree. You want to do non-technical work in your lives, in which case MBA is the most popular choice. And then the third choice is really interesting, and that's the choice that I want to stress on. Is in some sense a hybrid choice. For the lack of better word, a hybrid choice, right? So what it means is, being doing a job which is at the center of, technical and business world. So something like business analytics, data analytics, information systems, you're doing a lot of number crunching, you're doing a lot of math, you're doing a lot of analytics work, but you're doing it to make business decisions. You're doing it to drive business strategies. So you're getting a view of, both the worlds. And usually that's a really good choice for people who don't know, what their interests are, or who don't know what their strength is. Because if you're at that juncture, then, um, later on when you figure out what excites you or what you like, you can move in either direction. So if you are unsure, I would encourage you to, basically find out more about these opportunities, talk to more people in these fields, um, and try to understand, if that would be something for you. Another thing that I want to talk about is, movement from one vertical to the other. So one thing that's really cool about being in technical areas is that it allows you in future to move to a non-technical degree or non-technical job, right? I've even seen PhDs pursue MBA like later on in their career, and then eventually go on to become, marketing managers, or, um, other similar, business functions. However, if post rookie, if you do an MBA, right, and then if you pursue something for like say 5 to 10 years, and then suddenly you want to become a hardware engineer or a programmer, then that path is much more difficult. Making that transition, and it's not impossible. Nothing is impossible. I've seen people do it both ways, but you just need to be aware of, how much effort it takes from moving from one vertical to the other side, right? Um, Now let's talk about opportunity outside India. I would, as I mentioned earlier, right? I've been in US for the last 7 years, so a lot of what I mentioned today is going to be biased by my life in US, or focused on my life in US or my experiences in US. But a lot of it also applies to other locations outside of India, in Europe, Singapore, Dubai. So let's talk about, pros of moving outside of India. In particular, in US's example, the biggest pro is like the language. So most people in India know English language. English is the language in US. So it becomes really easy to pursue a degree here, navigate the job market, connect with people. Um, that may not apply for certain European countries, for certain other countries where you need to learn their language first to be able to properly connect with people. Um, so that is something that you need to keep in mind. Another advantage for US is right now it's the biggest economy in India, in the world. Not sure when China takes over, but at least for now they are the biggest economy. So if you are in the biggest economy in the world, then it opens a lot of opportunities for you. The job market is bigger, the pays are higher, the different kinds of job exist, movement from one area to the other is easier. So those are the kind of benefits that you can exercise being here. I already talked about more job opportunities. Another thing that I like about US is the Indianness of US. So one thing for sure is if you move outside of India, right now we don't realize, but when we move out of India, we really miss the Indian lifestyle, right? Because that's what we've been used to for the last 20, 25, 30 years of our lives. So once we move out, we suddenly start missing a lot of Indian things that we want to do. And the Indianness of US is really cool in that way because there are so many Indians here, so you can celebrate Indian festivals in big groups, you can eat Indian food, you can watch Indian movies. And I have countless examples of when US has surprised me so much by having so much access to Indian things here. um, another reason for moving outside of India could be higher pay. That I've seen a lot of people these days move outside of India and go to countries with which have like a better economy than India, and then it allows them to accumulate a lot of cash in the short term, so that they can get back to India with some financial stability and then eventually do what they want to do, take some time out in their career. So those are the reasons that you could possibly move out of India. Now, what are the downsides? Downsides are many. The biggest downsides is visa restrictions, and in US there are countless restrictions. Even though I personally believe, it's my personal opinion, that US is the most immigrant friendly country in terms of how many procedures they have in place for immigrants to come in, apply for schools, apply for jobs, pay taxes, buy a house, buy a car, whatnot. But there's still a lot of visa restrictions, and I'm sure you guys must have read about it. If not, I can talk for hours about it, but we're probably not today. So you need to keep that in mind, because you constantly have to be aware of what paperwork needs to be updated, what kind of things you need to, what kind of visa stamping you need to be worried about. And although I'm not sure about what happens in Europe or Australia or Dubai, other places, but what I am sure of is every country has its own caveats. In every country you will be facing some restriction that you wouldn't face in India just because you are a citizen of India. um, Another big point is cultural adaptation. You might move into a country which has a culture which is completely different to what it is in India, and then it might, for some people, take a long time to adapt to that new culture and adapt to that new lifestyle. Some people actually see it as a big plus, getting to experience different cultures in their life. Some people really enjoy it, but some people not so much. So you need to understand what kind of a person you are, and whether that's something that you need to be worried about if you're moving outside of India. um, Another big thing is social life can have a big impact in India. It's in some sense, India is a really tight knit community, right? You talk to your neighbors, you have a lot of friends, families, you can be open about a lot of things with a lot of people. Especially in US, I don't see that's the case. So sometimes your social life can have a big impact if you don't have enough friends and family around you. Sometimes you might feel lonely, or sometimes you might feel that it would have been better to have your family around you. So yes, I mean, often people don't talk about those things when they're talking about immigration outside of India. People always talk about what kind of cars you can buy, or what kind of good jobs you can get, or what kind of travel experiences you can go through. But I have rarely seen people talk about the downsides, and there are downsides associated with it. Another big thing that I've especially seen in US is, and this can be a con or a pro both, right? But the thing that I've seen in US is that there are no standardized processes for getting an admit or a job. What I mean by that is, take IITs for an example. The process to get into an IIT is really simple. You take an exam, you get a rank. Based on that rank, you get access to certain choices. You pick one, and you're done, right? There's a lot of objectivity in it, but that's not the case, when we are trying to get an admit in a college in US, because it's a very subjective process. There are standardized process, but those are subjective. So you don't really know whether you're going to make it or not, because the process is like that, right? So sometimes people can get confused in it. Sometimes it helps people because it's not based on one day's performance. Same thing for job. Like in India, you have uh, placement days where companies come to your campus, recruit you, you get a job, you're done, right? But that's not the case in US. We do have career fairs, but a lot of companies don't usually recruit from career fairs. What happens is you pursue your degree, and then you are supposed to reach out to different employers and get a call back, interview with them, and then find a job. But the good thing about that is, let's say in Rootkey, placement day zero, you're not in your best, you don't give your best performance. So then you certainly lose access to a chunk of companies that would never like see you again in the short term, at least, right? In the next 1 year maybe, or in the next few months, because they already hired the people that they wanted to hire. But that's not the case in US. Let's say I interview with Apple and they don't decide not to take me, then I can reach out to Apple, apply for another job, interview again, see if it works out for me, right? So this can be a con or a pro, both depending on where you are and what kind of things you're looking out for. um, let's talk briefly about exams. Again, this is very US focused, but I do want to stress this point, which is why I included this slide. I'm sure you guys have heard about GRE, GMAT, and other tests. Um, and often when I talk to people in my informal mentoring experiences, people trying to come to US, one thing that I've noticed is people always neglect the differences between an assessment test and a competitive exam. JE is a competitive exam, right? Let's say you appear in JE and 2 lakh people appear for
Yeah,
their exam.
Kinshu, I
Yep.
think I got a message from some of the students that some of them are waiting in the lobby.
Sure. Yeah. Let me admit them. Sorry. I was actually not getting like pings uh, to admit people. Usually I hear a ping noise, so I just stop. I only see one person and I admitted them. Not sure if we have more. All right, I admitted everyone
Yeah, please go ahead.
that was waiting. Okay, that was waiting. All right. Yeah. So, yeah, the difference. Okay, I think I just got another request. All right. Yeah. So what I want you guys to understand is a difference between a competitive exam and an assessment test. JE is a competitive exam, which basically means that if you appear for JE, 2 lakh other people appear with you, and you get a rank on of let's say 1800. That simply means that 1799 people on that day for that particular exam were better than you. It does not say that they are better than you in life in general, or it doesn't say that they will be more successful, but it really just means that for that particular day, for those 6 hours in that exam, they perform better than you. And what happens is they get access to certain opportunities before you. So when you go and appear like in counseling and you're trying to get a seat in one of the IITs, those 1799 people will get the chance before you. But GRE and GMAT are not like that. GRE and GMAT are essentially like your IQ test. You can take it as many number of your times, as many number of times. On that particular day, your GRE score is an assessment of your performance that day. And your performance can change next month or in 2 months from now, 3 months from now. And in fact, what I've seen in US in schools in US is they actually encourage improvement in those scores. So let's say you take GRE or GMAT one day and you don't feel like you did your best, you can take it like 2 months later. And if you perform better, it will be seen in a positive light that you attempted something, you got some score, you felt you could do better, and you actually did better. So that's a really good thing. And I can say that because I've taken GRE and GMAT both, so I understand what those exams are. So they're essentially just assessment tests of your quant skills, of your analytical abilities, or your comprehension abilities, right? That's what they are. Also, what happens is when you're applying to schools in US, or in other places, or even in IMs, right? Your test score is only one factor in your packet, right? And your packet is much bigger than that. So your packet includes what you did in your undergrad, what kind of experiences you went through, what kind of courses you did, what kind of research projects you did. Were you the convener of of your cultural fest, or I forgot the name of the cultural fest in Roorkee. Sorry. Yeah. So, you've gone through certain experiences in 4 years of your life in Roorkee, and that will count for something when you're applying for higher education. So then the good thing there is, let's say in the day of your JE, you were not your best. In some sense, you pay some price for it. But that's not the case when you're applying for master's degree, because in your first year, if you did not put in enough effort, you still have your second, third, fourth year to do it. In your fourth year, if you did not put enough effort, you can still offset it by pursuing a job in that area and then gaining some relevant work experience coming in. So that really allows you to, you know, basically divide your effort in a longer period of time. So it's essentially like, appearing for JE every single day in your life, but then the JE is not as competitive as it was when you appeared for it. Like, especially in US, essays, recommendation letters, um, your test scores, your research projects have a lot of weight in your application. Um, I did hear a noise about other people wanting to get in, so let me admit them. And then I wanted to briefly touch upon the immigrant um, issues and visa restrictions, etc., etc. But I would, because we are already almost running out of time, I would just briefly go over this. And this just applies to United States, no other country, right? So United States has different visa classes. Most people come to US with an F1 visa, which is a student visa to pursue certain degree, and that visa allows you to work in US for 1 to 3 years, depending on what your degree is, after your education is completed. And then eventually you move to a work visa, which is an H1B, or it can be an L1B visa. And then there's a track to get permanent residence in US, which is a long track. It's most people do not go through, like eventually come across, like eventually get the green card in a shorter period of time. And as I said previously, all visa types have their unique complications associated with them. If you guys are interested in, anything in particular about US, we can set up one-on-one chats or another informal mentoring sessions, or through the formal mentoring platform that we have, and I can talk in more detail about anything related to US and my experiences around it. So yeah, I think that was my last slide. I would leave time for Q&A, for people to be able to ask questions. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, Mr. Kiran, greetings. Uh, can I just add for 2 minutes something which I have experienced for the PhD particularly? Uh, am I allowed or should I do later? Okay. The recently I just got my daughter admitted in PhD in Germany. So I would like to share that experience, that how I had prepared and helped her. And of course, one is the whatever the GMAT and all, etc. But while preparing the application, I looked at it. Okay, what is the PhD course? Who is the person? What's the capability of the person who is going to interview, etc. of that department of that German university? And so I study about that person, head of the department as well, and all that, the technicalities and all. And then I recognized, okay, his experience is, I can understand he was probably my junior. So I built up, assuming that I'm the one who is going to make a decision whether to admit this candidate or not, or allow or not. So how would I then judge and look at it? And so, and with that respect, I built up the application for her, and I covered the thing and then told her, this is how you prepare. But then before that, on the topic itself, I went through the topic in depth myself. Although it was aviation, I'm not aviation, I'm a mechanical guy. But I went through the aviation, I did a lot of hard work, and then I thought, okay, I'm the one making decision. And then I built it up. The result was that they were zapped, they had no questions, and she went through. They said she has covered everything, whatever it was, and there's nothing to ask. And then she was done for it. And so this is one angle I want to add on. When you're preparing the thing, one is, I understand the young people are preparing as a candidate, as a student, and they lack the experience that how the an employer or head of the department or head of the organization makes decisions. What do they look at it? What are the things that they looking into it? I think that's where it is important. If people can get a little experience from the senior mentors who have certain kind of experience, they are the one who do the selection of the people, whether for the job or for whatever reason. I think that's the angle I want to add on, but that plays a major role, because I even told her these are the possible questions they will ask you, and you prepare yourself for that. And then she was right at that, and in one go it was all through. While I was worried about it, because she's a girl. That was a little, the hiccup. And I know the Germans very well. I know the German culture. I've been working with them for almost 30 years, so I know it very well. And then I know that she's an Indian living in Dubai and all that. So I covered all those things, and that how it is going to impact and affect, etc. I think there are some these factors as well which play a major role. So if candidate is preparing with the thing that, okay, what this employer is gonna ask or what his capability is, then you really have a very good chance. That's what I want to add. Thank you.
I mean, I have
Yes,
hundreds of examples like
I
that.
have changed
Like,
it. I changed completely. A mechanical guy, and then I ended up in instrumentation. By default, some incidents occurred. I was in Saudi Arabia, and it was a Kuwait war and all invasion, etc. And then I got that opportunity. the Dutch guys couldn't come, white people, so I had to step in and then did it, and that changed. I'm basically now an instrumentation guy. uh, so yes, but then I went into a totally, went into a very different kind of a business, which was a fabrication business. Went back to the mechanical, and then again in solar energy. Then again we are going back into the oil and gas fabrication. So yes, I believe the basic engineering, particularly from Roorkee, we should be proud of. They give enough knowledge, the basic knowledge, and they prepare the person to do anything, whatever they want. It's just that they have to put their mind into it. That's all. So one can succeed in any field, anytime.
Okay, I do want to add on that to that answer, a little bit more, specifics of how you do it, because one of the aspects of the question was how to do it, right? Um, there are hundreds of example, and that this is one reason that we're talking about formal education today. Formal education is the easiest way to pivot into something else, right? I give you my example. I was in Tata Steel. It has, it is as different from Apple as it can be. I was in a steel industry, now I'm in VLSI industry. I have another friend who was a mechanical engineer in Roorkee. He came to UT in Austin, and then he pursued a degree in mechanical engineering. He eventually went to a patent consulting firm where he started reviewing mechanical patents for companies who file for patents, and then now he's trying to pursue patent law. So it, and all of that is in a span of 7 to 8 years. So a patent, from patent law to mechanical engineering, Roorkee again is very different, right? There are people who pursue engineering, and then 7 years later they are traders or they're bankers. So there are channels to do it, and the more specific answer is, if you know what you want to do, then take minor steps in those directions. And if formal education can help, great. If professional certificates can help, great. It is possible, but you need to do something in that direction, and you need to make a conscious effort and have an understanding of where you want to go. So those are the specifics of how to do it. um, Dimple, you want to take
Uh,
that up, or Vatsal? Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, well, it depends. So we can go it in two ways. So maybe Dimple can answer the part about masters because she did a masters out from outside India, and then I can add on to that about PhD.
Yeah, sure. So,
Yeah.
when I applied for masters, I like for UC Irvine, I got a fellowship, and that fellowship was based upon the profile only. I didn't have to apply for it separately, but I know a lot of masters programs where you can apply separately for fellowship or scholarship by like through an application where you can tell like those applications have their processes. You have to write an essay, a separate essay or something. But yeah, or you can go for research assistantship. In masters, you also have an option for teaching assistantship where you can be a TA for like the bachelor's programs or other programs that you might have knowledge in. So you can apply for those and get financial aid through those.
Yeah, so and adding to that, so whatever Dimple said stays the same for PhD as well. So all of the options that she mentioned, they hold true for PhDs as well. Uh, Apart from that, in US specifically, what you can also do is when you write to professors, right? So if you want to work, for example, in Princeton, and you write to someone that, okay, I want to work with you, or in your applications, you mention that I want to work with a certain person in the field, because as Kinshuk said, when you pursue a doctorate, it's very important that the person with whom you are doing research, right? Because that person is sort of the person who takes you into the research arena, right? And then you can ask them, okay, what are the funding that they have? So they might have some fundings from some research institutes, and then they can fund your graduate studies. And moving on, so this is where things become a bit different in US and Europe, because I am pursuing my PhD in Europe, and in Europe, PhDs like PhD candidates are not seen as students, So, for example, even if you talk to someone who's pursuing PhD in US, they will still tell you that they're graduate students, right? But in Europe, we are really employees. So we are employed by the university under certain projects, and we are supposed to like work towards that goal. All right. So when you make an application for Europe, then first of all, the applications don't always go to the universities. They go to the individual person with whom you want to work with, or to that person's lab. For example, I am in physics of fluids lab, right? And which is under the University of Twente, but really I'm associated with physics of fluids and not I mean and not so much with University of Twente. Right. And there, the way you will get funding, or the way you will get a scholarship, or a salary, so it's essentially a salary, is by talking with the person with whom you want to work with. And also there are other fellowships. For example, there is an Erasmus fellowship for masters, where you get funding to pursue a master's in Europe. Similarly, there's a Commonwealth fellowships. So there are many other fellowships as well. For example, I know for Canada, one of the fellowships which I applied for was a Shastri fellowship. So you have many fellowships options there. So what you should focus on is more towards what you want to do, and then try to look up fellowships or funding options in that area. I will just conclude with one last thing, that we will have another seminar in a week or so, where we will take this specific topic. So we will take the discussion about research as a career option, and we will talk only about what is research, how you figure out these things, and so on. So that would happen in the coming weeks.
So
Thanks,
let me
Dr.
take 1 minute to add a little bit to that answer, because we've talked so far about fellowships, scholarships, but there are certain degrees where the options for fellowships are very minimal. And a classic example is, MBA degrees. These schools usually do not provide a lot of fellowships to students coming in. And if you want to come pursue an MBA in, let's say, Wharton or Harvard, then the cost can be, in upwards of $150,000, the cost of your program. And in those cases, what you need to figure out is, again, we talked about ROI, right? So you're investing that much money for your career. So what are you getting out of it? And another thing that you need to assess is, what is your break-even point, right? So you spend $200,000 in your degree, then you get a certain job outside, like after your degree, right? In how much time you can save enough money so that you can repay your 200,000, and does that make sense for you or not, right? And there are loan options available in India, where you can provide, where you can put something for mortgage and take a loan. These days, there are a lot of companies in UK, basically investment funds, which provide loans to students coming to particular universities in Europe and in US. And it's fairly easy to get loans from them if you are admitted to certain institutes. So go ahead and explore those options as well.
Cool. So I think let's take one or two final questions. Let me ask this question, and maybe Professor Das can address this. So this is a two-part question on how to do research in another branch. So that's one part, and then how to get recommendations while in college. So any
Oh
perspective?
yeah. So first of all, let me tell you, research in branch, this idea is not correct. Research is a particular direction. You cannot say that I am doing research in mechanical engineering, or I am doing research in electrical engineering, something like that. Research is very much, intermixing kind of thing. I believe that you might be knowing that for research, only mathematics knowledge, or only physics knowledge, or only chemistry knowledge, or any engineering branch knowledge is not sufficient. Okay, so you will be finding out that you are having a particular area where you are actually doing, and for fulfilling that area, for fulfilling that goal, whatever things or knowledge you require, you can acquire from various other directions. So I should say that research in a particular branch is not that much defined in that sense. Maybe in masters little bit, yeah, because little bit of learning through course credits are there, but obviously in doctoral program and further whenever you will be going for postdoctoral programs, so definitely this kind of divisions are not there. Then I forgot about the second question, Dr. Panesha, so if you can just
Yeah, the other question is how to get recommendations while in college.
yeah, so this is pretty, I should say easy. What you need to do is that I believe that you get associated within a research branch or research group as of your liking. Means you have to figure out that which direction you want to pursue your career. Get associated with a group, work for that group a little bit, show your passion about that group. You need not to always give the final contribution. Your passion will be showing that okay, you can do better whenever you'll be going for higher studies. And I believe that the faculty or the group head will be uh, you know very much eager to give you a recommendation. That is not a problem, I believe. If I'm allowed, can I speak about last to last question little bit, just in a
Sure,
short
sure.
sentence?
Yeah,
Yeah,
go ahead.
question was there that how you can go for change of your career. So Kingshuk Batsal and they have actually mentioned, and Mr. Bagel has also mentioned. So just I wanted to tell one point over there that this change of career will not happen overnight. So it will be a very gradual process. You will not understand that when you have changed. So what you need to keep in your mind is that you are passionate about one thing. So that is everywhere. And whenever you are choosing for your research career, whenever you are changing your career, you are applying for masters, you are applying for PhD. Everywhere, I think that is the thing. You have to chase your goal or dream. That's all.
Yeah, so maybe I can add one thing to the last question, which was how do you get a letter of recommendation? Because well, I applied for positions just a few years ago, so I'm a bit recent in this, and I think so. The main reason I got let's say admitted to almost every program where I applied was a letter of recommendation from Professor Das. So Professor Das probably did not say this, but he gave me a good recommendation because I worked with him for well 4 years, right? And he gave me a nice recommendation letter. In fact, when I came in and when I talked with people, like when I was being interviewed, right, at many places, they made a point of saying that I had a very strong recommendation letter. And the only reason he was able to do so is because we interacted on a much higher level. So we were connected. So I mean whatever problems I had, let's say academics, non-academics, whatever, like research, non-research, I always used to ask him. And that's something that we need to understand, that your professors are there to help you, right? Which means that you should always develop like a good rapport, a good relationship with them. And that can happen. You can do it with research, by doing research with them, or you can just do it just by talking with them as well, right? And that actually, so letter of recommendation, I'm glad that question came up, because that forms, I think, the most important pillar in your application. And the reason I'm telling you this is because nowadays, since now I am about to finish my PhD, now I get to shortlist students for interviews, right? And the only thing that we look at is what is that person's like, who is recommending that person. And if we know that person and if we know their research, then we tend to give them let's say an edge over other people. All right. So this is a very important question. I think this is something that we should all talk about. This letter of recommendation and things like that. Yeah.
Great, thanks. So,
Mr. Kiran, I just want to add a very short, very quick one,
okay,
because these topics are there, so it is important. Actually, on the masters particularly, now because of the new scenario of this online COVID, etc., I'm searching a master's degree for my another daughter in hospitality. Uh, so I've really looked at it, something around some 30, 40 universities from the world, all the best ones, US and Europe and all, etc. What is interesting I found in that is that if these are, some of them are online, then the costs are quite reduced. The value of the university or the degree is same. So that's quite interesting. Now, I can just give you a little financial figures. What I figured it out, if you're talking about UK, you're talking about around, I think, 25,000 to $30,000. US, the best ones, right? The Stanford and all those, around $35,000. You can get an online masters. And then if you go to the like Greece or Spain, Italy or Korea, but it all depends. Then you're talking about around $7,000 to $8,000. So And interestingly, for my particular daughter, but this is hospitality, not engineering. And but hospitality, pay attention, is a technology application in hospitality, which emphasizes on artificial intelligence. So this child has never studied all that, but and I found a very interesting, the masters in Korea, interestingly, and they focus, it's a purely on technology heavily. So I think one of the thing I would say, try to look for the online courses with the same organizations, same universities, and maybe you can save money. But the benefit is, if you're working, you can still keep working, do your studies, and finance it yourself. So that can be one possibility. This is what my daughter is going to do for this hospitality course. Uh, that's one. Second one I forgot. I think the recommendation. Yeah, I just want to tell you, we have a very large, the network of IIT Roorkee, but I'm also connected to Pan IIT. Quite a lot of mentors are connected to Pan IIT. So anyone who has a difficulty, we can always organize, one of the recommendation letter from the Pan IIT. Pan IIT, we are talking about, we are around 300,000 IITians all over the world, and we have people, and I know quite a lot. I know around 500 IITians, in almost every field. So we can always help and assist on recommendation letter.
Yes.
Whatever kind recommendation letter you need, I'm sure we can get it.
Thanks. So I think we are over time now. So there are many other questions, but I think it's a good point to stop. Um, so if you haven't filled out the form, please do so, so we can include you in further conversations and get your questions answered. So I'll post that form again. Any final thoughts, Kinshuk, from panel members?
Yeah, I did see some other questions coming up, and I would actually be very happy to answer those questions. What I would go ahead and say is, usually it's really difficult to respond to LinkedIn messages or emails individually, one on one, and usually there's a lot of overlap in people asking similar questions to you. So, if there is enough interest, we can maybe schedule another just Q&A session where nobody would be presenting, and we'll have a small panel answering those questions. If you really want mentoring around certain fields, please make sure that you reach out to us, and then that basically allows us to assess the demand of what kind of mentoring is required by students in Roorkee, and it helps us, schedule different sessions for you guys. So yeah.
Yeah, and there are many mentors who are in academia research. So if that's a career choice you're
Absolutely.
thinking about, so there are people with many years of teaching and research experience. All right, thanks everyone for coming. I'm really happy with the turnout, and thanks a lot to the panel. They have put in a lot of hard work to get all the material together and present it.
Thanks for organizing. It's
Yeah.
a great
Thank,
initiative. Yeah.
thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you very much,
Thank you very
Kiran.
much.
It was really nice.
All right.
Thank
Thanks,
you. Thank
everyone.
you very much.
Night.
Okay.
Okay. Good night. Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye. Bye bye.